So this May, on May 2nd, at Students for Quality Education, on the Southern California regional level, we'll be launching a hunger strike on May 2nd. And our hunger strike will revolve around these 4 demands. And the hunger strike will not end until these demands are met. Thank you.
In my 35 years, this is the most dramatic time in terms of people struggling financially.
In this system, since the 1998, I think it is, the tuition for students has gone up 318%, with the possibility that it's going to go up again another 10% in the fall.
You know, the very fact that students have to take multiple jobs and to what used to be social norms are now becoming luxuries, it's a great shame and a huge cut to our national fabric.
I know California's appropriations for higher education adjusted for students. If you add are at the lowest level now than they have been since the 1960s, I believe. So the reductions have been very substantial in the hundreds of millions. And for the institutions to backfill some, but not all of that, with tuition increases. And I believe in California's tuition increases in the last few years have been averaging somewhere around 10% per year.
We always go back to the California Master Plan, which was supposed to provide essentially a free education to the top 1/3 of high school graduates for the future of California, for the future of California's economy. And it's tragic that that's no longer what's happening. We're turning away tens of thousands of students from the CSU. Tuition has gone way up. Students are going into debt. I think it's tragic. Yeah.
Accessibility has been squeezed by all sides, and students are less and less able to access what we should all think is a universal human right, which is education. It's higher education. It's a very basic thought that education should just be free. How can you charge someone for education?
There's a couple different things. One, I have students that are dropping out of school, and the tuition hikes are forcing them to basically drop out. Secondly, I have nieces and nephews that I have to answer to one day, and I want to have a good answer. So I want to basically fight for their education so that when they grow up to be my age, they're not going into debt like I am in debt. My mom's a school teacher.
The cost of going to Cal State Fullerton has gone up tremendously in that time. In fact, I'm paying tuition for someone right now that has been here since her freshman year. And I think when she started, from the time she started 2.5 years ago to now, the price just of tuition has gone up almost 200%. And on top of that, she's paying, I bought her books, and she's never spent less than $500 a semester on books, and parking per semester is $250. So the cost is just astronomical. In comparison, when I started, it was almost free for people.
The tuition increases that are happening isn't fair. Like, we've been getting cut every single time from our budget, and then the tuition increase, it keeps going up. My freshman year, I had to pay about like $2,000 something, and now it's like I have to pay $3,000 something. I'm like, wow, that's ridiculous, and I don't know if I'm going to be like able to continue, because the scholarships that I have been receiving, I paid through scholarships, they won't be enough to cover those $3,000. So right now I'm struggling to like apply for different scholarships because I don't receive financial aid from the government, and it's just saddening because I won't be able to continue my education. I really want to be a teacher in the future for elementary school kids, and I know that there's other students that want to do great things for our community, like become doctors, engineers, contribute to society basically. And if tuition increases are stopping us from doing that there's a problem, because how is our government expecting us to contribute if they're making it impossible for us to continue our education because of tuition increases?
Well, it's like an old person wanting to have everything for themselves and not give anything to their children. It means the United States, the people who have privilege and power and influence want to keep all of it, as if theirs is going to be the last generation that really matters anyway, and everybody else is on their own.
The first demand is a 5-year moratorium on student fee increases. So for 5 years they can't raise tuition. They've been doing it semester after semester, sometimes multiple times during a semester. The second is the elimination of all 23 campus presidents and Reed's housing and car allowances. They make 6-figure salaries. They can afford a house and they can definitely afford a car. The third is that if cuts are made to the Cal State system, it should first and foremost be made to administrators and executives, reversing their salaries back to 99 levels and using those funds to open up more classes. And the last demand is the removal of freedom of speech restrictions on campuses, because we as students should be able to express our views. We're in a university. This is where you talk about your views.
And that's a question that we have to pose. Like I said, like, what do we hope to gain? Like the continued sacrifice of probably like pretty shitty next 4 days that you're gonna have.
No. I'm Raisa Arias. I'm a freshman at Cal State Northridge. I'm 18. My majors are theater and anthropology. And the reason I'm doing this hunger strike is because it has an effect on people. Like when we were tabling outside of my school, people would come up to us and say, "So you're starving yourself for us?" And it affects them so deeply. And the fact that we got crowds of people around us just talking about these issues and other issues too, not just about the students themselves, but questioning the very idea of capitalism. I think that's the most rewarding thing. Well, when I say this, I mean of the tuition hikes, of the CSU system, of the things that they're doing to students too, and why they're trying to keep students out. But because it's connected with a lot of other issues.
My name is Matthew Delgado. I'm a double major in photojournalism and English. And why I'm doing this hunger strike is because things need to change. I'm mainly doing this for my siblings and my peers around me, but things need to change before they get out of control, as they already are. But they need to stop somehow.
Be divided! Students united! We'll never 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 be divided!
The CSU is funded by taxes. So when tax income is down for the state, they don't have money to spend on the CSU. And they're spending more money on prisons now than the CSU as well. So we're looking at what are our priorities? What do we want to do as people, as citizens in the state of California? What kind of future do we want for the state?
And the money comes from the legislature and the governor. And I think your demands that you're saying here, are not possible. You are focusing on the wrong group of people. You should be focusing on the legislature and on the governor, because that's where the resources come from. That's where the decisions get made about how much money the CSU is going to have available to help educate students.
So in a way, he's kind of right. We need to be focusing our attention on the governor. Now, the governor might say, and the state legislators might say, well, you're focusing on the wrong people. You need to focus on society in general. In a sense, they're right. In the United States right now, we're in a position in which people more broadly, there's sort of this what our own administrators call the social mandate, which suggests that education should cost more, that we should take money out of the public system, that it's not up to the state to provide education for everyone, just basically those who can afford it. And in that sense, like Chancellor Reid's right, he's just following this so-called social mandate. But I think that's an excuse. Because if you look closely at what Chancellor Reid wants to do, he is and the system, they are pro-privatization. They are for-profit. They believe in this social mandate. They're spending no time and no energy, as far as we can tell.
I think there's a huge amount of disconnect with the reality of students and other members of the university community when you, like last November, raise our tuition, and then the very next decision is also to raise the salary of San Diego State University President Elliot Hirschman by $100,000. These decisions are extremely problematic, and whether you may think that it's solely the problem of Sacramento and the decisions they make in funding and cutting our funding for the CSU, it's also extremely problematic when the decisions of the CSU leadership are completely disconnected with the reality of the constituency that they supposedly represent, and it's a gross misallocation and misappropriation of funds.
And just to go off of that, when you give administrators pay raises in a time of crisis, it's very hard to then talk to that state legislature and say, we need more money, because they view it as a mismanagement of funds and allocating it to the wrong places.
We see Chancellor Reid as being part of this and not fighting back against it. We don't see him as an advocate for public education at all.
And we would appreciate if the Chancellor would step up and the Board of Trustees would step up into a leadership role to do some public relations, some TV spots, TV ads, whatever, be on radio, lobby more aggressively to ensure that the public understands the significance of this institution and what happens if it gets deconstructed.
So you already said no to the demand for a 5-year moratorium because, well, you already said no, and we feel that it's non-negotiable. You understand that we're all in a hunger strike, and so that saddens us. And the housing and car allowances, will you take a symbolic step and advocate to the Board of Trustees that these luxuries are not necessarily needed in a time of crisis?
No.
Well, basically, he didn't want to come to an agreement for any of the 4 demands that the students talked about. He felt that executive compensation was fair and just, and he had to treat students and faculty and students and administrators, equally. This is my 3rd day on the hunger strike, and we'll be going on until this conflict has been resolved in one way or another.
Hi, my name is Irvin Vargas. I'm 18 years old. I entered California State University Fullerton when I was 17. I was studying to become a bio major, hopefully gaining a degree, and it has become very difficult for me to continue in education at Cal State Fullerton because of the difficulties of coming from a low-income family. I didn't expect that it's going to get really difficult in paying for school, and I was luckily able to get a scholarship my first semester at Cal State Fullerton, thanks to Jeanette and the EOP program. It was the California State University Fullerton Future Scholars Scholarship. I felt like I was very fortunate and very lucky. I felt like a bit of faith that I was able to get that financially pull the first semester, but I had a scholarship and I was ready, but I wasn't ready for the expectation that my dad's work was gonna get less hours, and I didn't think that it would have any bit of a problem to affecting us, especially me, since I've always been told that I'll be able to make something out of myself in life, be successful.
When you cut access and you have tuition increases and budget cuts, what that does is it doesn't allow for those people who are already on the edge to get that education that they needed to to net themselves and their families a greater income. And therefore, more people cannot go into the middle class.
Yeah, I'm determined to go back to school, whatever it takes. I just have to find those ways. There you go, like that's what I'm trying to find those ways to go back to school.
You know, I teach several courses every semester, and over the past, I'd say 4 years or so, as you know, these cuts increased, I have students who are sleeping in their cars. You know, we now have homeless students. We have to do a sweep of the parking garages every night. The police do, to, you know, ensure that, you know, it's safe. I have students who are in debt tremendously.
So, but my mom, she just filed for bankruptcy. My brother, he has like a $40,000 debt already from school, and he's not good with money, so it's going to be tough for him to pay that back. Me, right now, I have, I think, $17,000 out, which is scary. I know it's not a lot. Like, a lot of people have a lot more out. So my situation's not the worst, but it just goes to show that this is happening to a lot of different people and at different levels. So somebody told me that if I go into the office, I might be able to find out that they got more money and they might be able to reimburse me. I don't think that they have, or if they have, they probably, I don't know what kind of lottery system they work out to figure out which student is going to get the money that they need. So we're going to find out. I was just wondering, I qualified for a federal grant. I know this is a while ago, but they said that they ran out of money, and I was just wondering if there, by any chance, that they got more money in.
What's your campus funding? So that's why. So we haven't received any funding, so we probably most likely won't receive any funding.
Is there any chance, or is there like a lottery if you do get money? Is there like a lottery or something?
No. Well, if you were, I believe we ran out of funds for like the entire year. I don't know if we'll receive extra funds, but as of right now, we don't have any funds.
Okay. Somebody told me to check back. That's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And they'll let you know if something does happen, though.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. So that's what I figured was going to happen, but it was worth a try. They didn't have any more funding. They said that they didn't receive any more. So, well, I already paid it. It was $1,414, and I paid it out of my own pocket. And I guess that's just it, you know. I mean, it's education, so we'll see.
If you don't know, student debt was projected to surpass $1 trillion today, and given that it's past the $1 trillion mark, it's unprecedented. It's definitely an issue for students and for the national economy.
I've already paid $25,000 off, and I still have another $60,000 to go.
The average debt of our students that graduate is $13,000. The average debt in the United States of students is $24,000. Therefore, I think we do a pretty good job of keeping our costs as low as we possibly can. So student debt is not a big issue for California State on the average for our students.
Again, being completely out of touch, you know, $13,000 or $24,000. He's basically comparing us to a system that's already in crisis and saying, well, our crisis isn't quite as bad as that crisis, so stop whining, stop complaining, you still have it good. When you compare it to other countries like France, and we'll say, this is ridiculous, right? We're not better off, we're way worse off than these other students in these other countries are, so I think it's disingenuous. I think it's a real shame that he's actually making those comparisons, because essentially what he's trying to do is blind society, blind the public to the fact that there is a crisis, and instead of instead of facing up to it and saying, yeah, saddling someone with $13,000 in debt, that's just the average debt. If you take on a $13,000 debt and you get hired as a teacher at $35,000, $40,000 a year, how could you ever hope to pay that off? Not to mention rent an apartment. Buying a house is completely out of the picture, right? You couldn't even afford to live in Orange County, you know, on that salary. And if you have a $13,000 debt on top of that, that's it. You're saddled. You're in big trouble.
I had a couple of government loans, and I took out guaranteed student loans. I decided to take out more loans when I wanted to go to law school, and these were private. When Sally Mae bought my loans, they doubled and tripled to $118,000 at one point. If you default, they charge fees and penalties, collection costs. The problem is they're not dischargeable in bankruptcy. And so now it's been 30 years, I'm 52, and I've had these student loans all of my life, and I was unable to discharge them in bankruptcy. They have no consumer protections, and it's particularly predatory because of the huge amounts that they charge. They're impossible to pay. Basically, it's so oppressive, and it just takes your energy. It's like having a terminal disease when you feel hopeless. And I never have owned my own home. I'm single with no children, and I have nothing. I declared Chapter 7 a few years ago, and I had to go through an adversary proceeding. It was devastating because I was helpless. I had no attorney, no money to pay one, and then they don't take these cases anyway. They say that the legislation prevents them from winning, so you're just left on your own to fight the Department of Justice alone.
And that would be mass mobilization. We walk out and force a society-wide discussion on what are our priorities as a society. This whole idea that there's no money, that's what they'll say. There's no money for this. Of course there's money for this. All you have to do, you've been in Orange County, just drive around, walk around, look at the houses, look at the wealth. We're just oozing in wealth, but we're also overwhelmed with poverty. You know, and there's this amazing gap between the rich and the poor.
Colleges and universities will either survive or they won't. I mean, our economy has gone through huge structural changes in the last decade, and there's lots and lots of types of organizations that haven't survived. I don't think the issue is whether colleges and universities survive. I think the issue is whether our country has the level of college education among the population that it needs for our society, for our democracy, and for our economy.
If people want to be educated, why should we block them? If the resources are there, it's wrong for us to block. It's wrong for us to block socioeconomic progression. It's immoral. It's unethical.
It's probably the improper way to say it, but it sucks that everything is a business, that when people want to pursue an education and it costs so much money, and especially in the times that we're in this recession, and education shouldn't be a privilege. It shouldn't be. Whether, even if it's getting your bachelor's or an AA or getting certified or master's, MD, stuff like that, it shouldn't be a privilege. I mean, at times you ask yourself, well, I ask myself a lot, it's like, what type of generation am I living up in, growing up in? What type of generation was I born in? When people are more worried about materialism and stuff like that, and the way that they advertise, like, oh, you can get this new car, I better get this new car, but when people don't really see a better picture of getting an education. And it sucks that the CSU and the UC systems are increasing the tuition and making it a bit difficult for more people to get. I mean, it's already hard enough to pay for school, and then having to increase the tuition, it's just, I'm baffled about it. It's just like, really, people do this?
What is the purpose of not educating your students? in a developed country like this.